Hey, it's Kevin Lawton with the New Warehouse Podcast, bringing you a new episode today. And on today's episode, I am going to be joined by Pete Grett, and he is the founder and CEO at the BlackRock Group. And he's an AI evangelist, I think, is what I see on LinkedIn. So he's very heavily into tech, very heavily into AI. And I think we're going to talk about everybody's favorite top of mind topic these days, which is AI all over the place. And specifically, we're going to dive into AI in the warehouse because I would say that's one question I get asked a lot from people is like, "Oh, how are you using AI in the warehouse now?" And we're going to see if Pete can answer that question for us and give us some background here. So Pete, welcome to the show. How are you?
Thanks, Kevin. Thanks for having me. I'm doing well.
Definitely happy to get you on. Happy to talk about this and talk about some of the realities of AI and maybe some of the myths of AI too, if there are any, and what's really going on in the space. So why don't you tell us kind of a little bit about your background? Tell us about the BlackRock Group and how you kind of came to found this company.
Yeah, so I started out as a 19-year-old temp worker in the warehouse and decided pretty
All right.
quickly that I wanted to be able to move up in life. And so
Yeah.
I took any job in operations that I could. And eventually that led to a role in IT. We were put in a new warehouse
Mm.
management system. They said, "Hey, you want to be in IT?" And I was like, "Great." So I started out with warehouse management systems, and that was about 25 years ago, coming up on 30 years ago.
Mm.
And I just really progressed from there and took on new responsibilities and strategy and building systems and new business implementations, things like that. Spent a majority of my career in FedEx supply chain, and for the last 6, 7 years, been out on my own running a supply chain consulting firm. And for the last few months, we have started the pivot to generative AI because we really just see that as a
Mm.
transformative technology that's going to change the world, not just in the supply chain space, but even more broadly
Yeah.
speaking in business.
Mm. Very interesting and definitely a great story there, starting as a temp in the warehouse to getting to where you are now. I mean, I think that's one of the most interesting things sometimes I think about the warehouse environment is like, yeah, I've heard many multiple stories where people have just, started out as a temp or they just started as a forklift operator and then, through their career, they're progressed and they're, like a VP of ops or, higher level and all these things. It's pretty interesting to hear how you can kind of figure out how to move up the operations ladder and even the company ladder too as well. So it's pretty interesting to hear from you, and it's great that you got that opportunity to go to the IT side of things because I think probably that end user experience certainly helped you a lot, right, in understanding how to implement that system in a way that would be received fairly well by the users. I'm sure is that right?
Yeah, absolutely right. So, one of the things we really focus on is having people who've been operators because we want to
Mm,
be practitioners of what we kind of preach. And so we have
yeah.
folks who know how to use the tools, and our niche really is to sit between IT and the business and go, this is a really powerful investment and a really
Mm,
typically large investment. Let's get the most out of it. And the best way we can get the most out of it is operationalizing that investment as much as possible, right? Use the system to its
mm.
full capabilities, wring every last cent of ROI out of it. And we think the best way to do that is by being operators and knowing how to run a distribution center, know how to run a supply chain and logistics in a more general sense. And that really kind of flavors everything we do.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's such a good key to have in that experience, that like on the floor experience. And I've been a warehouse manager before too, and been in operations and all those things. I've certainly, I've certainly had those point of contentions with IT in some cases where,
For sure.
they're not understanding how this is translating to the floor and the operation, right? And why it won't work that way exactly. And I think it's great that you're focused on that and you recognize that as well. So I mean, tell us a little bit about kind of because obviously you started in operations and then you pivoted over to IT. I mean, tell us what kind of really triggered like the passion for the tech and now like the AI side of things. What's was the catalyst for that?
So early in my career, it was honestly just ambition. I
Mm,
was always raising my hand if it was a step up, a step out, more responsibility, greater
yeah.
opportunity. And that's how I got into IT. They're like, hey, we're doing a new system thing. And I
Mm.
was like, is it a promotion? And they're like, well, yeah. And I was like, okay, great. Sign me up for it. I'll do it. You
Yeah.
know, not only do I work operations, but I work third shift, I work second shift, I work in every
Mm.
area of the facility, and IT just was the next big thing. So that was a
Mm.
great opportunity, and a lot of that's been fairly opportunistic. Over the last few years, it's really about relationships, and that's how we've gotten into new clients and being able to
Mm.
service new people in the supply chain space. And then over the last few months with AI, it's just I tried it personally, and I just saw its
Mm.
enormous potential. There's just a lot there. I use it every single day in a
Mm.
variety of ways to help run the business, and then
Mhm.
also to just color what we do. I think, unfortunately, there's a lot of companies out there that have a lot of administrative work, a lot of analysis, a lot of
Yeah.
content creation that is just as well suited to be done by Gen AI as a person. And I
Mm.
see Gen AI the same way that Jules White at Vanderbilt, who leads their AI, sees it as augmented
Mm.
intelligence instead of artificial intelligence. It's really meant to extend people and provide more meaningful work for people,
Mm.
not less meaningful work.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, and I think that's an interesting perspective, and I think it's kind of mind blowing to see because AI obviously we're talking about warehousing here, logistics, but just in general within the world has just kind of exploded over the last year and 2 years, you could say now, and just the rapid advancement of what it can do and what we're seeing it can do to, like you said,
Sure,
augment that person and have you do things that maybe typically you couldn't really do before. Like, I mean, I see some of like the you talked about content creation. I mean, see some of like the AI videos and graphics that are being
sure.
generated, and just the quality of those over time, like, is just in a short amount of time is pretty wild. And it's allowing people to do those things that maybe before they weren't necessarily a graphic designer or couldn't figure out graphic design. Now they can just have AI make a graphic for them. So I think that's pretty interesting, and I love to see it, and I think it's certainly powerful as well. But I'm curious, as we look at AI, I think the first thing that probably comes to mind for the average person is certainly like a Chat GPT type of situation, right? That's kind of like the first thing that really like came out there,
Yeah.
I would say, and like everybody was like, "Oh, Chat GPT," right? But now as we bring AI into the warehouse, I mean, I guess let's start with, is AI in the warehouse now? And like, what kind of applications are you seeing where AI can be leveraged in the warehouse?
Yeah. So, our tagline that I really believe in is make better
Mhm.
decisions, solve problems faster. So, we're going
Mm.
to have a little bit different view than maybe some larger consulting firms that are trying digital transformation 2.0, and going out and spend $100 million and change the entire enterprise landscape. That's
Yeah.
probably worthwhile, but I think it's too early. It costs a whole
Mm.
lot, and it's going to be a long time to get your ROI back out of that. I think what's more transformative and has immediate value is how can we take an individual's job and make that better, make them more efficient, make them more productive. So in the warehouse, great
Mm.
example of that is analysis where you spend labor. Are you over counting things? Are you over auditing things? Some of your quality checks, where you're doing picking, how you're slotting the warehouse. It used to be that we had to take a much broader view about how to configure these kinds of things that happen inside of a warehouse. Where with the
Mm.
analysis with AI, you can focus labor, you can focus attention on where it really delivers value. So what we're doing with clients
Mm.
today is, let's count things less, let's check things less, let's audit things less, but let's be more meaningful about the things that we choose to do. And a lot of that's powered by just being able to take some of those numbers and crunch them very quickly. So you could do this before, but you would have to kind of build out how to do
Mm.
this. You would have to use large enterprise software, very sophisticated Excel models. Where now, with something as simple as a Chat GPT Plus $20 a month subscription, you can feed it data
Yeah.
files and do analysis in minutes. Try the results, try again. It's very iterative. It's really the 80/20 rule. It's not going to be perfect. It's going to come up with
Mhm.
some suggestions that really you would look at and go, nope, that's not really it. But it's meant to work with you, not replace you. So for a seasoned logistics professional, being able to look at that and say, nope, that's not it, that's not it, that's a great suggestion. I'm going to try that. And in the matter of
Mhm.
minutes, being able to put the recommendation in place and start to measure results, I think that's a big win.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I think I think that's what's most exciting for me too, is that analysis step, right? I mean, you think about like an operations manager, warehouse manager, and the time that they have to do like a data analysis is, I mean, it's pretty much non-existent, right? I
Yep,
mean, and you're also, I mean, from that perspective too, like you don't necessarily, come across an ops manager or warehouse manager every day that's like very in tune with data, or has
for
that skill
sure.
set to be able to do that, right? So being able to give them that, and then they can see, like you said, like there's three suggestions, right, from ChatGPT or something, and they can know like, okay, what's a good one to go by. But getting the analysis and getting to that point is really that big kind of hump to cross, and that hill to climb. So I mean, as it's coming out, I mean, are you seeing, I mean, you guys as Black Rock Group, I mean, are you putting in place some of these like AI workflows where people can use it? I mean, what does that
Uh,
kind of look like? Like, how does that go in place?
Yeah, absolutely. So we really have three foundations of AI. One is our services area
Mm,
where it's the simplest things like folks need just AI explained to them, to making custom GPTs, to doing
yeah.
whole strategies and business evaluations. So there's kind of like that services stack. The middle
Mm,
of that is a product stack where we build our own AI products and also
mm,
utilize that to replicate that for folks who, everybody wants an AI button in their software these days, whether it's rewrite by AI or recommendations by
yeah.
AI, whether that's labor or slotting or planning or just a host of things. Really, what I would call
Mm,
spot solutions, right? Is how can we do this like one specific thing really well when I press this button? So
mm,
there's that. And then lastly is kind of our broader supply chain push where we think we can do some transformative things at a bigger level. Those are the longer term plays where it's like, okay, how can we do like distributed ledger,
mm.
blockchain type transactions? How can we use Gen AI to really lower the adoption barriers for that to really eventually push us into Web 3.0 and just the new way of doing business?
Mm. Interesting. Yeah. Yeah. And I'm curious to hear like some of the use cases there, like you guys have come up with or seen customers that have requested. I mean, when you look at like the because if we talk about AI, right? I mean, I think it's good that we point out like there's different types of AI, right? I mean, we're mostly talking about kind of generative AI, which would be like your chat GPT here. And so like when you're setting up these generative AI instances for some of your clients, I mean, what types of like applications are you seeing that they're looking for, or how is that kind of how have they been utilizing it?
A lot of it's analysis and recommendation, right? So
Mm,
for spot solutions, especially, it's a software that's probably doing something that's really discrete in its solution. And then they want to be able to take that same kind of information repetitively and go and get analysis and recommendation. So if you're
mm,
doing labor management, let's say, and you provide a full LMS, well, how can I take these same data files that are very consistent, give them to Gen AI and say, hey, what are my top three movers that I could change for these variables that might lead to the highest
mm,
ROI, right? So a good for instance with that is, if I reduce travel by 15%, then I will increase my throughput by 30%. If
mm,
I change my number of pallets that I can carry on a piece of equipment from one to two, then I'm going to increase productivity by 40%. Things like that. So then,
right.
variable analysis, ROI, and then again, be able to give some recommendations. And that's really where it works powerfully with a experienced supply chain person who might say, oh, that's great. We're just getting ready to renegotiate our equipment lease. This
Mm,
is a great time for us to look at this. And oh, if I went to double pallet jacks instead of single pallet jacks, All right, that makes sense to me. Or maybe they say, look, we just signed a lease 6 months ago. All right, I'm going to cross that one off
Yeah.
the list. What's next? Two, three, four, five. But again, it's just so quick. It's so low cost. It's so low effort that even
Mm,
if you get a 50% win rate, it's just going to pay for itself in just literally a matter of minutes,
mm,
and what we found too is that, to your point, even if you got an operator that's more sophisticated and is building some of these
mm.
models in Excel, it's really hard to keep your own data bias out. So if I'm building a
Yeah.
model in Excel, the old quote is torture numbers, they'll confess to anything. If I'm thinking we should switch
Mm.
equipment, then when I build the model, it's probably going to come out that way. you know,
Yeah, yeah. It's gonna lean towards that. Yeah.
it just
Yeah, it
is.
makes
It's
sense.
just human nature when I'm trying it. But if I can get some recommendations and I get some at least directionally correct ROI to go, oh, okay, well, I hadn't thought about that before. I'll explore in that
Mm,
direction and give it some more. And one of the things that Gen AI is very good about is kind of chain of thought, right? So we
mm.
do step one, we provide some more feedback. We do step two, we provide some more feedback. We do step three. That really leads to some powerful outcomes and recommendations, and really reliable too. So that's one of the best ways to get any of the hallucinations or random things out, is to just take things a step at a time and build out your process.
Hmm. Interesting. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think that makes so much sense. And I think it's great application and help you to make those decisions much faster. Because especially in like the operations world, I mean, everything is moving so fast. Like the faster you can make the decision, like the faster you can avoid some disruptions or interruptions in your service levels and things like that. And I think, being able to do that and process and, be able to pivot based on these recommendations, I think it's such a smart thing as well. So I mean, obviously very powerful tool that people can leverage. But I know that it doesn't necessarily just get plopped into place and is necessarily plug and play in a sense, right? So I mean, talk to us a little bit about, if somebody's listening and their operations, like they're thinking like, okay, yeah, like this is something that, we should look into, and we should start getting some type of AI
Yeah.
into our workflows and things. I mean, what does a company need to do to prepare to bring that in? Because I mean, it involves a lot of the data and things like that.
Yeah, so I think there's a couple of real foundational pieces. One is anytime you're
Mm,
using new technology, data is so important, right? Having access to your data, having as good a data as you can have, understanding where it comes from, what it means. Those are really, really important pieces no matter what technology you're using these days. So the more
mm,
you can invest in that, the better off you're going to be, because it's going to yield results across the spectrum of different tools you can use. The second is,
mm,
I would say, it's cheap enough to get help. So that's why we keep our AI services so low. So even to do a full company strategy is $5,000. So we try to
mm.
make it affordable enough so that these are OPEX expenses that don't take a lot of authorization. You want a custom GPT, $500. So just
Mm,
really cheap, really accessible. So again, that 80/20 rule, if you get some benefit from it, it's just so low cost that it's going to earn it back pretty quickly. And you think about this, right? So from like a labor perspective, a slotting perspective,
mm,
utilization, storage, if you can move the needle 5 points for most
mm.
organizations, that's really transformative. And then what we really try and do is to say, traditionally labor is the largest expense of this, but don't neglect things like inventory carrying costs. If you can
Mm.
refine your storage profile and how you do your planning and procurement, if you can reduce inventory and carrying costs by 5%, usually that has a dwarfing effect to what you spend on labor. Because everybody
Oh
loves
yeah.
robots, everybody loves automation, and that's gotten a lot of focus in operations over the last decade. But we find that the ROI on making better decisions versus making better execution,
Mm.
it's like a factor of 10 to 1. If you do poor
Yeah.
planning, it doesn't matter how well you exercise your labor, you're going to be inefficient. So really
Mm.
that's where we see AI being a huge lift, is make better decisions, solve problems faster. The execution stuff is a pretty well-worn path with things like Lean and Six Sigma.
Mm. Yeah, absolutely. I think that's such a great point to make because it is like, I mean, automation and robotics, like you said, everybody's, like in love with that and loves to see all the shiny object stuff. But, at the same time, like if you're bringing in that automation robotics and like you said, your planning is bad or your processes are bad, like you're not really going to see the benefits that you're thinking you're going to see. Like, so it's good to be able to have that faster decision making and the more accurate decision making too, to be able to drive some of that and really help kind of optimize and be more efficient before you even get to kind of like that level in technology, right? So very interesting stuff to talk to you here and learn more about this. Now, if we look to like the future, I mean, obviously, AI is constantly evolving and pretty rapidly, as we've seen too in the technology. But I mean, what for you, like what's exciting for you for the future? Maybe some predictions. What do you think is going to be happening either on the AI or just the tech front in general?
Yeah, so I think it's just going to continue to grow. When it's a learning
Mm,
technology and it improves itself as it goes along, this will just be what I think Siri was meant to be all along. We give Siri kind of a hard
yeah.
time because Siri doesn't do so well as like a natural language processor.
Yeah.
We joke in our family that her favorite answer is, "Well, here's something I found on the web." Okay, well that's not helpful.
Yeah.
I think it's going to continue to evolve where it really will get to that point. You can have natural speech,
Mm,
text to speech back to you, and it will fully understand, and we won't have these hallucinations. We will have just
mm,
basically a digital assistant that can
yeah.
really handle a lot of that. Some of this is a little more techie, like RAG, where we have the retrieval assisted um, pieces to it, the generation, retrieval assisted generation, where it can go and get data and bring it back, right? We have
Mm,
reinforced learning from humans, where we help refine the model. And all of these things are
okay.
just going to make it so much better. So Altman, who runs OpenAI, has already said GPT-5 is just going to, he's going to be embarrassed by GPT-4 because it's just so much
Mm,
better. This technology isn't growing in a linear path. It's not like it's 2 times better. Every change is like it's a logarithmic scale. It's like it's 10 times
yeah.
better. And
Mm,
every change, then, two changes, it's 100 times better. And that's really where our future is. I think the bigger challenge for us is there's not enough computing power available and the natural resources it takes to run that
mm,
computing power to really do that for everybody. So we
mm.
have to unlock other kinds of technologies like quantum computing to really be able to feasibly step into our future and have enough natural resources to do that sustainably.
Mm. Yeah, very interesting, and I think it is just. I mean, it's just mind blowing, like you said. I mean, the way that it's scaling and evolving just so rapidly. Like you said, like the next iteration isn't like it's just a little bit better. It's like just like almost like light years ahead, right?
Yeah,
Than the last one, and only in a short period of time too. I mean, not even like extended amounts of time in between these
for
updates. I mean, I
sure.
think it's pretty remarkable, and it'd just be very interesting to see how it continues to evolve in general, and then also evolve like within the warehouse space too, and the different use cases that people start to come up with. So it's very interesting to talk to you here, Pete, and dive into this topic that everybody loves to talk about, AI, right? And have all these
Fantastic.
questions about, and hopefully we answered some of them today, and very interesting to see how you guys are developing it and putting some use cases into place from warehouse operations and taking into consideration your experience from the floor too. I think, which is a great thing as well for the end user to have that great user experience. So really appreciate you coming on. And if people are interested in learning more about the BlackRock Group or getting in touch with you, what's the best way to do that?
Best place is on LinkedIn, Pete Grett on LinkedIn, and I'm the only one there, so you'll find me.
All right, great. And we'll definitely put that link at thenewwarehouse.com as well and in the show notes so people can easily find it. So, Pete, thank you very much for joining me today. And thank you for your time on the show.
Thanks, Kevin. I appreciate it.
Hey guys, thank you so much for tuning into today's video here on our YouTube channel, The New Warehouse Podcast, and I appreciate you tuning in. If you liked what you saw, make sure you subscribe to our channel, and if you like this video in particular, make sure you like it as well. And if you want to get this great t-shirt that you see in the video behind me, Warehouses Are Sexy, head to warehousesaresexy.com and get your own.